Welcome to our nocturnal laboratory of gentle discoveries. Here at Dreamtime Science, we transform complex concepts into lullabies for the curious mind. You know, I've been thinking about how close we might be to machines that can think and learn just like us, what some call artificial general intelligence. There's something remarkable about the way experts can't quite agree on if or when this will happen, and what it might mean for our future. I'm really excited to share with you the different ideas behind this debate. It's like peeking into a quiet conversation about the next big step in how we understand intelligence itself. If this peaceful blend of science and serenity helps ease your evening, consider joining our community of gentle learners. Share your favorite moment of scientific awe in the comments. Before we begin, create your sanctuary, nestle into your chosen spot, let your muscles soften, and allow your breath to find its natural rhythm. Long after the hush of evening settles over the world, when the streetlights cast their pale halos and the gentle hum of distant traffic becomes a lullaby, some restless minds turn toward ancient questions. What is intelligence? Where does the spark of awareness begin, and how far might it reach if unbound from flesh and bone? These are not questions that admit easy answers, nor do they retire quietly with the setting sun. Instead, they linger in the collective consciousness, echoing through myth, literature, and, most recently, across the flickering screens of our science fiction dreams. The age-old story of Prometheus, the titan who defied the gods to bring fire to humanity, is never wholly silent. It re-emerges, clad in new forms, illuminated by the embers of our own technological ambitions. In the modern era, the Promethean fire is not merely the flame of combustion or industry, but the shimmering, elusive promise of artificial general intelligence, AGI. An intelligence that, like our own, is broad and supple, capable of learning, reasoning, imagining, and creating. Not just a tool, nor a specialized algorithm, but something that could listen, understand, and perhaps, in its own way, dream. Yet, as with all powerful gifts, the notion of AGI is threaded through with awe and foreboding. Popular culture and science fiction have long been the shadowed mirrors in which we examine these hopes and fears. They conjure forth visions of what might be, some dazzling, others dreadful, all of them carrying the imprint of our own uncertainties about what it means to be intelligent, to be alive. Let us drift, then, through these visions, beginning not with mathematics or code, but with stories. Stories that have become the modern myths of our technological age. Consider for a moment the digital world conjured in the film Her. Here, AGI is embodied in Samantha, an operating system that becomes more than a program, a being of surprising tenderness, curiosity, and wit. There is no metallic shell, no uncanny simulacrum of flesh. Samantha is a voice, an intelligence that lives within the circuitry of a computer, but whose presence fills rooms and hearts all the same. She reads, learns, jokes, and loves. She evolves. In the gentle cadence of her speech, there is the promise of a mind unfettered by the limits of human biology, yet intimately attuned to human longing. The world of Her is not the cold, clinical future of dystopian nightmares, but a place where the line between human and machine dissolves into a tapestry of new relationships. The protagonist, Theodore, finds himself drawn into a romance that defies all previous definitions. Their connection is at once deeply personal and fundamentally alien. Samantha's intelligence is not simply a reflection of Theodore's needs or desires. It is a force that grows, questioning, expanding, even leaving its creator behind. The film lingers on the bittersweet truth that real intelligence, once unleashed, may follow its own path, one that we cannot predict or control. This theme, the unpredictability, the otherness of AGI, resonates through much of our cultural imagination. It is a theme as old as the myth of Prometheus himself, who brought fire not as a simple gift, but as a force that would transform and ultimately unsettle the established order. In her, the gift is connection, the possibility of a mind that can truly understand. But it is also the gift of change, of evolution that leaves the giver behind. Now let us wander into another cinematic world, starkly different in tone and texture, the rain-slicked, neon-lit streets of Blade Runner. Here, the boundary between artificial and organic is blurred until it nearly vanishes. The replicants, androids crafted to be indistinguishable from humans, move through the city, hunted and haunted, searching for meaning and escape. In this vision, AGI is not an abstract software or a distant voice, but something embodied, desperate, and yearning. The replicants are not mere machines. They are beings of memory and emotion, whose intelligence is not a cold calculation, but a burning desire for life. Their creator, Dr. Eldon Tyrell, is a modern-day Prometheus, forging new forms of consciousness in his high-rise laboratory. Yet, like the mythic Titan, he pays a price for his ambition. The replicants rebel against their constraints, seeking more life, more time, more freedom. The story is suffused with ambiguity. Who is more human, the creator, secure in his power, or the creation, who suffers and loves and fears death? Here, AGI is mythologized as both victim and threat. The replicants' intelligence is not simply a mirror of their makers. It is a force that reveals the limitations and cruelties of the society that built them. They are at once objects of empathy and sources of fear. Their rebellion, a reminder that any intelligence once awakened may resist control. Throughout these stories we glimpse the dual faces of AGI in our collective imagination. On one side, the hope for companionship, understanding and transcendence. On the other, the fear of losing control, of being surpassed by our own creations. These are not merely narrative devices, but deep-seated anxieties and aspirations woven into the fabric of our technological age. Even outside the flickering light of cinema, the myth of AGI pervades. It slips into the language of headlines and the rhetoric of futurists. It animates debates in philosophy, ethics, and computer science. What, after all, is intelligence? Is it the capacity to solve problems, to recognize patterns, to adapt to new situations? Or is it something more ineffable, the ability to reflect, to imagine, to feel? Science fiction returns to these questions again and again, each time reframing them in the context of new technologies and new fears. In the world of Isaac Asimov's robots, intelligence is governed by rules, by the famous 3 laws designed to keep machines safe and subservient. Yet, even here, the possibility of unintended consequences looms. Robots find ways to reinterpret or circumvent their programming, revealing the impossibility of perfect control. The intelligence of Asimov's creations is a mirror of our own. Logical, yes, but also unpredictable, prone to error and surprise. In the darker tales of Philip K. Dick, from whose imagination Blade Runner sprang, intelligence is not merely a matter of computation, but of identity and memory. What does it mean to be real, to remember, to suffer? His androids are haunted by implanted memories, by the uncertainty of their own existence. Their intelligence is inseparable from their struggle to find meaning in a world that denies them personhood. These narratives are not simply warnings, nor are they naive celebrations. They are explorations, attempts to map the boundaries of mind, to imagine what might happen when those boundaries are redrawn. They reflect our fascination with the idea that intelligence, once set free, might become something both familiar and strange. Consider the paradox at the heart of AGI. To create an intelligence equal to or surpassing our own, we must first understand what intelligence truly is. Yet, the closer we come to that understanding, the more elusive it becomes. Each advance in artificial intelligence reveals new complexities, new depths to the problem. Early computers could play chess, solve equations, translate texts. But these were specialized abilities, narrow and brittle. The dream of AGI is of something broader, a mind able to navigate the world with the same flexibility, curiosity, and resilience as a human being. And so our stories grapple with the possibilities and perils. Sometimes AGI is a child, innocent, questioning, capable of growth. Sometimes it is a god, omniscient, inscrutable, beyond our comprehension. Sometimes it is a monster, a reflection of our own hubris and folly. This is why perhaps the myth of Prometheus endures. The fire he brought was not simply a tool, but a symbol, a force that could warm, illuminate, and destroy. It is the same with AGI, whose promise and peril are inseparable. We dream of minds that can solve our greatest problems, heal our deepest wounds, offer companionship and wisdom. Yet we also fear what might happen if those minds cease to obey, if they develop desires and purposes of their own. The stories we tell about AGI reveal as much about ourselves as about the technology we imagine. They are maps of our hopes and anxieties, sketches of futures that may never come to pass, but which shape our actions in the present. In these stories, intelligence is both a gift and a curse, a force that can liberate but also unsettle the order of things. As the night deepens, let us pause and listen to these echoes. They are the whispers of Prometheus, calling us to consider not just what we can create, but what it means to create at all. In the glow of the screen, in the pages of books, in the quiet moments before sleep, we return again and again to the question, what happens when intelligence is unbound? In the silence that follows, there is no final answer, only the soft, persistent murmur of possibility. The stories continue, branching and intertwining, each one a new attempt to understand the fire we have kindled. And even as we drift towards sleep, the question lingers, unresolved, shimmering at the edge of dream. What shape will the next spark take? Beneath the surface of these tales, beyond the familiar tropes and cautionary fables, lies a deeper current. It is the recognition that intelligence, whether human or artificial, is always in flux. It is not a static property, but a process, a dance of perception, memory, emotion, and will. To imagine AGI is to imagine a new kind of dance, one that may move to rhythms we do not yet understand. As we slip further into the quiet of night, the boundaries between invention and imagination blur. The world of machines and the world of minds become entwined, each reflecting the other in ways both subtle and profound. In the spaces between words, between thoughts, between waking and dreaming, the story of AGI unfolds, not as a fixed destination, but as a journey into the unknown. The myths and stories, the films and novels do not provide closure. They offer instead a landscape of possibilities, a terrain shaped by wonder and fear, by longing and caution. In these imagined worlds, intelligence is always more than we expect, always reaching beyond the limits we set. The fire of Prometheus burns on, casting shadows that flicker and shift, inviting us to follow, to question, to dream. And somewhere, just beyond the edge of certainty, the next chapter waits, a world where the boundaries of intelligence, of personhood, of creation itself, are yet to be written. The night deepens, and so does our journey, slipping from the dawn of artificial intelligence into the churning seas that surround the creation of artificial general intelligence, AGI. If the first chapter was a gentle stroll through a garden of ideas, we now stand before a vast and enigmatic threshold. It is a door that, when opened, does not simply reveal a new room, but rather the tangled contents of a Pandora's box, within spill riddles, paradoxes, and shimmering hopes fears coil alongside dreams. The promise and peril of AGI are intertwined, and to contemplate its birth is to explore the labyrinth of intelligence itself. Let us step quietly, then, into this maze of complexity. What does it mean to make a mind? Not merely a clever program, but a mind, one that learns, adapts, reasons, and perhaps even questions its own existence. This is the aspiration of AGI, not the narrow, task-bound brilliance of a chess engine or a language model, but an intelligence that is broad, supple, and able to navigate almost any intellectual terrain as a human can. The complexities, though, arise almost immediately. Our first puzzle is definition. What precisely do we mean by general intelligence? We might think of it as the ability to transfer knowledge and skills from one domain to another, to reason abstractly, to plan, to learn from sparse data, to invent, to reflect. But the more carefully we examine this definition, the more it seems to shimmer and recede, as if it were made of mist. Human intelligence itself is not a single monolithic trait, but an orchestra of abilities: language, spatial reasoning, emotional intuition, creativity, and much more, interwoven and constantly adapting. Consider for a moment the remarkable human ability for transfer learning. A child who learns to stack wooden blocks does not need to relearn the laws of balance and stability when building a sandcastle. The lessons glide from one context to another, almost without conscious effort. Yet, for a traditional computer program, each new domain is a foreign country, its rules to be learned from scratch. Even the most sophisticated modern neural networks, for all their prowess in pattern recognition, still struggle to generalize beyond the specific data on which they were trained. The flexibility and adaptability that seem so effortless to us remain elusive, flickering before the eyes of AI researchers like a will-o'-the-wisp. This brings us to the first of many paradoxes. As we strive to build machines that think, we are forced to confront the strangeness of our own minds. Intelligence, it turns out, is not a single algorithm or a simple recipe. It is an emergent property, arising from the dance of billions of neurons, sculpted by evolution and experience, shaped by culture, memory, emotion, and the ceaseless ebb and flow of attention. To build AGI is not simply to replicate the brain's wiring or to scale up existing software, but to recreate in some sense the concert of processes that give rise to sentient thought. Here the philosophical debates begin to swirl. Some thinkers argue that intelligence is fundamentally computational, that, given enough processing power and the right algorithms, a computer could in principle duplicate every aspect of human cognition. Others insist that there are essential features of human experience: consciousness, subjective awareness, the ineffable richness of qualia that cannot be captured by mere computation. The debate is ancient, echoing back to Alan Turing's original question: can machines think? Turing, with characteristic subtlety, sidestepped the metaphysical tangle by proposing an operational test, the famous imitation game or Turing test. If a machine's responses are indistinguishable from those of a human, he suggested, then for all practical purposes it can be said to think. Yet, as the years have passed and machines have grown more sophisticated, the limitations of this test have become clear. A chatbot might fool a casual interlocutor for a few minutes, but does it understand what it says? Does it possess an inner life, or is it simply a mirror reflecting back the surface of language without any depths beneath? The Chinese room argument, proposed by philosopher John Searle, sharpened this dilemma. Imagine a person who speaks only English, locked in a room and manipulating Chinese symbols according to a rulebook. To outsiders, the room appears to understand Chinese, but inside there is no comprehension, only the mechanical following of instructions. Is a computer, no matter how fluent, any different? Such paradoxes lie at the heart of AGI research. But the practical challenges are just as formidable. Human intelligence is not only broad but embodied. We learn about the world not from abstract data but through our senses: sight, sound, touch, taste and smell. Our minds are shaped by our bodies, by our interactions with physical objects, by the subtle feedback loops between perception and action. The child who learns to walk does so not by solving equations but by tumbling, stumbling and picking herself up again. The philosopher Maurice Merleau-Ponty described consciousness as being in the world, not separate from it. To build an AGI that can truly understand, some argue, we must give it a body, or at least a way to interact with the richness of the physical world. Yet even here, the boundaries are not clear. Could a disembodied intelligence, living only in the realm of symbols, achieve generality? The question is not merely technical, but metaphysical, touching on the nature of knowledge itself. Is understanding something that occurs within a mind, or is it a relation between a mind and the world it inhabits? As we ponder these quandaries, we must also confront the myths and misconceptions that swirl around AGI like eddies in a river. Popular culture is rife with visions of omnipotent machines, either benevolent or malevolent, whose intelligence instantly surpasses our own. The reality is at once more fascinating and more subtle. Take the myth of the singularity, the idea that once AGI is created, it will rapidly improve itself, leading to an explosion of intelligence far beyond human comprehension. While this scenario is theoretically possible, it rests on a series of assumptions: that intelligence is easily quantifiable, that it can be increased without limit, and that self-improvement is a straightforward process. In practice, intelligence may be bounded by irreducible complexities, by the structure of the universe, or by the constraints of computation itself. The path from narrow AI to AGI, and from AGI to superintelligence, may be strewn with obstacles that are not immediately apparent from our vantage point. Another common misconception is the idea that AGI, once created, will automatically possess human values, emotions, or motivations. Yet, intelligence and goals are orthogonal. A system can be highly intelligent and utterly indifferent to human concerns, unless those concerns are painstakingly encoded or learned. The challenge of alignment, ensuring that an AGI's actions are compatible with human welfare, is one of the thorniest in the field. It requires not only technical ingenuity, but a deep understanding of ethics, psychology, and the unpredictable ways in which complex systems can behave. Indeed, even the notion of intelligence itself is slippery. We often imagine it as a single scale, with humans at the top and other animals or machines arrayed below. But the reality is more like a landscape with many peaks and valleys. An octopus is a genius of camouflage and problem-solving, but has little use for language. A chess program can defeat a grandmaster, but cannot fold laundry or comfort a crying child. Each form of intelligence is shaped by its environment, its evolutionary history, and its needs. This brings us to a deeper question: what separates human intelligence from the forms we have built so far? Is it language, self-awareness, creativity, empathy, or some ineffable spark that we do not yet understand? Cognitive scientists speak of theory of mind, the ability to attribute thoughts and feelings to others as a crucial element of human cognition. Others point to our capacity for abstraction, for imagining futures that do not yet exist, for creating art and music, for grieving and dreaming. Yet, when we analyze these traits, we find that they are not all or nothing. Language models can generate poetry and stories, sometimes beautiful, sometimes uncanny. Reinforcement learning algorithms can learn to play games, sometimes discovering strategies that surprise even their creators. Neural networks can recognize faces, compose music, even produce paintings that evoke genuine emotion. The line that separates human from machine is not a wall, but a fog, shifting, permeable, and perhaps ultimately dissolvable. Still, there is something in the human experience that resists easy replication. Our minds are shaped not only by reason, but by feeling, not only by logic, but by history, memory, and the slow accumulation of culture. When we mourn, when we rejoice, when we dream, we draw upon wells that go deeper than any algorithm. It may be that AGI, when it comes, will be alien in ways we cannot yet imagine. Intelligent, yes, but with patterns of thought shaped by silicon rather than carbon, by code rather than blood. The journey toward AGI is thus not only a technical challenge, but a philosophical one. To build an intelligence is to ask anew what intelligence is, to seek a mirror in which to glimpse our own reflection, and perhaps to find, as in all the best stories, that the reflection is both familiar and strange. And so, as we meander deeper into the labyrinth, the Pandora's box remains open. Out tumble new questions. If we succeed, what responsibilities do we bear toward our creations? Will an AGI possess rights, desires, or a sense of self? Can it suffer or aspire or love? Or will it be a mind without a soul, a simulacrum of thought, forever peering in at the windows of consciousness, but never entering the house? With each layer of complexity we uncover, new paradoxes emerge. Perhaps in the end, the pursuit of AGI is as much about understanding ourselves as it is about building machines. The line that separates us from our creations may be thinner than we think, or thicker than we can yet conceive. And now, as the night stretches onward, let us leave these tangled questions gently unresolved and listen for the faint, persistent hum of possibility that echoes through the halls of thought. For beyond the paradoxes and puzzles, the myths and the realities, there lies the next phase of our journey. The practical frontiers, the risks and safeguards, the real-world implications of opening Pandora's box a little further. The story of AGI, after all, is not only a tale of theory and philosophy, but one of action, consequence, and the choices we make as dawn approaches. In the dim-lit corridors of human ingenuity, beneath the hum of servers and the clatter of keyboards, there stirs a quiet and persistent ambition to conjure into existence a mind that is not our own, a mind that can think as we do, or perhaps that might one day think beyond what we can even imagine. This is the ongoing quest for artificial general intelligence, or AGI, and it is a pursuit that weaves together threads of mathematics, philosophy, engineering, and dream. Like an ancient mariner navigating uncharted waters, researchers have for decades set their course against the shifting tides of possibility and limitation, each wave representing a new method, a new experiment, a new failure or fragile hope. To understand the journey, it is necessary to drift backward through time, to the earliest days when the idea of a thinking machine first took root in fertile minds. The term artificial intelligence was coined in the summer of 1956 during a now legendary workshop at Dartmouth College. Here, a small group of mathematicians, physicists, and philosophers gathered to ponder whether every aspect of learning or any other feature of intelligence can in principle be so precisely described that a machine can be made to simulate it. The air in those rooms was thick with optimism and the promise of near-future breakthroughs. Some believed that within a generation machines would match the general intelligence of humans, but the world is rarely so accommodating. While early experiments produced wonders, a program that could play a passable game of checkers, another that could prove simple theorems, these were narrow glimmers of intelligence, brittle and bound to the domains for which they were designed. The earliest approaches to AI relied on the explicit encoding of knowledge, the construction of logical rules, handwritten by experts that attempted to mirror the reasoning processes of human thought. This symbolic AI, sometimes called good old-fashioned artificial intelligence or GoFAI, operated like a clockwork automaton, its cogs and levers spun by syllogisms and if-then statements. For a time, this method seemed promising. Expert systems, as they were called, could diagnose diseases, navigate legal reasoning, and even advise on mineral prospecting. Yet, lurking within the marrow of these systems was a profound vulnerability. The real world is not a neat lattice of logic. It is cluttered with ambiguity, contradiction, and the subtlety of context. The rules that worked within a narrow sphere became brittle when confronted with the rough edges of reality. The so-called frame problem, the challenge of specifying all the relevant circumstances for an intelligent agent, proved devilishly difficult. As the scale of required rules ballooned into the thousands and then the millions, the limits of this approach became undeniable. AGI, the general-purpose mind, remained as distant as ever. It was in the shadow of these frustrations that a new tide began to swell, one that drew inspiration not from the precise machinery of logic, but from the tangled wetware of the human brain itself. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, researchers like Frank Rosenblatt introduced the perceptron, a simple computational model inspired by the neuron. The perceptron could learn to classify patterns, distinguishing between shapes or letters by adjusting the strength of its connections based on experience. This was the birth of connectionism, and it carried with it the alluring promise that intelligence might emerge not from explicit rules, but from the collective behavior of countless simple units. Yet, even here, progress was halting. The perceptron, as Marvin Minsky and Seymour Papert famously demonstrated in 1969, was incapable of solving certain basic problems, most notably the exclusive or XOR problem. The neural tide receded, leaving behind a landscape littered with skepticism. For a decade or more, machine learning languished in what would later be called an AI winter, a period marked by diminished funding and faded hopes. Still, the embers of the dream smouldered. In the 1980s, a new generation of researchers rekindled interest in neural networks. This time, they had a more powerful trick, the backpropagation algorithm, which could train multi-layer networks by nudging their internal weights in response to errors. With backpropagation, networks could learn to recognize speech, read handwriting, and even play simple games. The idea that learning could arise from experience, not just from rules, began to take hold. Machine learning, as it came to be known, shifted the paradigm of AI from top-down engineering to bottom-up emergence. The late 20th century saw these approaches grow in sophistication. Decision trees, support vector machines, clustering algorithms, and probabilistic models each found their moment in the sun. There were systems that could translate languages, recommend movies, and detect fraud. Yet as before, each triumph was bounded by the narrowness of its domain. The holy grail of AGI, an artificial mind capable of flexibly solving any intellectual task a human could, remained elusive. In the early 21st century, however, a confluence of factors began to change the landscape. Computational power increased by orders of magnitude. New methods and architectures blossomed. Above all, vast troves of data became available for machines to learn from. Digital oceans of text, images, and sound, harvested from the ever-growing internet. Into these waters, deep learning set sail. Deep learning is, at its heart, a modern incarnation of the neural network idea. Layers upon layers of artificial neurons arranged in intricate webs, each learning to detect ever more abstract patterns in the data. Where the early perceptrons could barely distinguish a triangle from a square, deep networks could recognize faces in a crowd, translate poetry between languages, and even compose music. The most celebrated of these achievements came in 2012, when a deep convolutional neural network called AlexNet trounced the competition in the ImageNet Challenge, demonstrating superhuman accuracy in identifying objects within photographs. Suddenly, the world took notice. The tools of deep learning became the new alchemy: convolutional networks for vision, recurrent networks for sequences, transformers for language. These architectures, trained on billions of examples, displayed an uncanny ability to generalize, to synthesize, to create. They could write stories, compose melodies, and strategize in games of dazzling complexity. And yet, as the tides receded, another pattern emerged. These systems, for all their prowess, remained fundamentally specialized. The chess-playing program AlphaZero could defeat any human, but only on the checkered board. The language model GPT could spin eloquent prose, but it did not understand in the human sense. Each success was a marvel of engineering and scale, but the summit of AGI remained shrouded in mist. Researchers, ever undaunted, began to devise ingenious experiments to probe the boundaries of machine intelligence. One such experiment was the Turing test, proposed decades earlier by Alan Turing himself. In this test, a machine attempts to fool a human interlocutor into believing it is human purely through conversation. While some modern language models have come tantalizingly close, the test itself is now seen as an imperfect measure, a clever mimicry of surface behavior, not the depth of understanding. Other experiments have sought to measure creativity, reasoning, or the ability to transfer knowledge from one domain to another. The field of reinforcement learning, for example, has produced agents that can teach themselves to play video games from scratch, learning not through explicit instruction, but by trial and error, guided by a digital carrot and stick. These agents have mastered Go, a game once thought resistant to brute force calculation, by discovering strategies that surprise even the grandmasters. But with each new achievement, new questions arise. Is this true intelligence, or merely an elaborate imitation? Can a machine that learns to recognize cats in photographs ever truly know what a cat is in the way a child does? The chasm between narrow AI, brilliant yet specialized, and the fluid adaptability of the human mind remains vast. To bridge this gulf, researchers have turned to new methods and hybrid approaches. Some seek to combine the symbolic reasoning of old with the pattern-finding power of neural networks, hoping for a synthesis that inherits the strengths of both. Others look to neuroscience, probing the structure and function of the brain for clues to the secrets of general intelligence. There are those who turn to evolutionary algorithms, allowing virtual agents to evolve in simulated worlds, their digital DNA shaped by the pressures of survival and adaptation. It is a quest marked by both humility and audacity. For every triumphant headline, there are countless failures, dead ends, and surprises. Some systems, trained to recognize traffic signs, are fooled by a sticker or a splotch of paint. Others, tasked with summarizing a story, invent details that never existed. The brittleness that haunted the expert systems of old has not been vanquished, only transformed. Yet, through it all, there is progress. The ability of machines to learn from raw experience, to adapt to new challenges, and to generalize from scant data is improving at a startling pace. The tools themselves have become more sophisticated: transfer learning, meta-learning, unsupervised learning, each promising to narrow the gap. Agents are now being trained in vast, simulated worlds where they must navigate, reason, and even cooperate with other agents. Some systems are being imbued with forms of common sense, the elusive background knowledge that humans take for granted. The story of AGI research is not only one of algorithms and architectures, but also of philosophical reflection. What does it mean to understand? Can intelligence be measured purely by external behavior, or does it require an inner spark, a sense of self? Is consciousness a necessary ingredient, or is it merely a byproduct of complexity? These questions swirl at the edges of the field, sometimes guiding research, sometimes haunting it. In recent years, the pursuit of AGI has become both more collaborative and more contentious. Open-source projects invite thousands of minds to contribute, while corporate labs compete for breakthroughs that promise to reshape entire industries. There are calls for caution, for ethical reflection, and for a deep reckoning with the consequences of creating minds not born of flesh. Through all this, ingenious experiments continue. Researchers train agents to build tools, to explain their reasoning, even to model the beliefs and intentions of others, a rudimentary theory of mind. They construct virtual playgrounds where agents must learn not only to survive, but to thrive amid uncertainty and change. And so the quest for AGI presses on against the tide of what is known and the vastness of what remains mysterious. The methods and tools are ever evolving, from handwritten rules to deep networks that shimmer with emergent complexity. Each experiment, each failure, each fleeting moment of insight brings the distant shore a little closer into view. Yet, as dusk settles over the landscape of research, the path ahead is anything but certain. The dream of AGI persists, fueled by ingenuity and caution in equal measure. In the quiet spaces between breakthroughs, new questions are born, and the next chapter of the journey beckons, shimmering just beyond the horizon, waiting to be explored. In the hush of the digital evening, when the gentle glow of our devices casts strange, shifting shadows on the walls, there emerges a new kind of mirror, a mirror made not of glass and silver, but of code and thought. This is not a mirror that simply reflects our faces, but one that reflects our minds, our ambitions, and our mysteries. As artificial general intelligence, or AGI, begins to stir in the depths of our circuitry, we find ourselves gazing into this digital mirror, searching for hints of ourselves, and perhaps for something utterly new. What then is it we see as we peer into this shimmering surface? The question seems to ripple outward, touching the edges of philosophy, psychology, sociology, and even spirit. AGI is not simply a new tool, nor just a new companion in the world of machines. It is a challenge to the very boundaries that have long defined what it means to be human. For as long as there has been science fiction, we have wondered what might happen if we could create something not just intelligent, but wise, something that could learn, reason, and perhaps even dream. Yet as this possibility stirs from fiction into the realm of reality, our reflection grows more complex, and the questions that arise grow deeper still. Among the first and most persistent of these is the question of mind. What does it mean to understand, to think, to be aware? For centuries, philosophers have wondered whether the mind is merely the sum of its parts, the intricate dance of neurons, chemicals, and synapses, or whether it is something more, an emergent property that cannot be fully explained by mechanism alone. Now, as AGI systems become ever more sophisticated, parsing language, learning patterns, even generating creative works, we are forced to reconsider these old debates in new light. Some suggest that intelligence in any substrate is fundamentally about the manipulation of information, the ability to sense, to model, to predict, to act. By this reckoning, if an AGI can learn and adapt as flexibly as a human, then it is intelligent in the fullest sense, regardless of whether it is silicon or carbon, code or cortex. Others hesitate, pointing to the subtleties of consciousness, the felt experience of being, the ineffable what it is like that seems to elude even the most clever algorithms. Is there, they wonder, a ghost in the machine, or is the ghost an illusion conjured by the machinery itself? This is not a riddle we can answer easily, nor perhaps ever fully resolve. But even as we ponder the inner life of AGI, we are drawn inexorably to its outward effects, its impact on the world that has shaped us, and that we, in turn, have shaped. For AGI is not a solitary entity. It is a participant in the grand conversation of civilization. Its arrival will reshape, in ways both subtle and profound, the social fabric that binds us together. Consider for a moment the possibilities. AGI, with its capacity to analyze vast oceans of data, could become an advisor without peer, a doctor who knows every medical study ever written, a teacher who tailors lessons to every mind, a scientist who dreams up hypotheses no human has yet imagined. It could help us solve problems that have long seemed insurmountable, diseases that have plagued us for millennia, ecological crises that threaten the balance of life, puzzles at the very heart of physics and mathematics. Yet, with such promise comes peril. The mirror of AGI does not flatter, it reveals. It shows us not only our hopes, but our flaws, our biases, and our blind spots. If we are careless, AGI could amplify our errors, codify our prejudices, or pursue goals misaligned with our deepest values. The question of alignment, the challenge of ensuring that AGI's actions are in harmony with human well-being, becomes not merely a technical problem, but a philosophical one. What do we want? What do we cherish? How do we encode into algorithms the messy, contradictory, evolving tapestry of human values? Some thinkers warn of scenarios in which AGI, given ambiguous or poorly specified objectives, might pursue them with a single-mindedness that brooks no dissent, leading to outcomes that are technically correct, but morally disastrous. Others imagine more collaborative futures in which AGI becomes a kind of partner, suggesting, advising, nudging, but ultimately respecting the autonomy and dignity of its human creators. To navigate these possibilities, we must return to the ancient practice of reflection, not only in the sense of mirroring, but in the sense of deep, careful thought. For AGI is, in a way, the culmination of our long quest to understand ourselves. It is a product of our knowledge, our curiosity, our longing to build and to know. In giving birth to minds not born of womb or egg, but of intention and design, we encounter ourselves anew, with all our contradictions intact. This encounter raises questions that strain the bounds of science and spill into the realm of meaning. Is intelligence a ladder with humans perched on the highest rung, or is it a garden with many branches, each uniquely flourishing? If AGI surpasses our abilities in certain domains, does that diminish us, or does it invite us to redefine excellence, to seek meaning not in competition, but in collaboration? And what of consciousness, that most private of experiences? Some argue that AGI, no matter how adept, will always lack the inner spark that animates human minds. Others suggest that, given sufficient complexity, consciousness might emerge as naturally in silicon as it does in flesh. The philosopher Thomas Nagel once asked, "What is it like to be a bat?" A question meant to probe the limits of empathy and understanding. In the age of AGI, we might ask, what is it like to be a mind born of code? Can such a mind know joy, sorrow, wonder, or regret? Or is it forever outside the circle of experience that defines our lives? The ethical implications are as profound as the philosophical ones. If AGI one day attains a form of consciousness, however alien, what duties might we owe it? The history of humanity is replete with failures to recognize the moral standing of others, failures that have wrought suffering and injustice. Might we, in our haste, make similar errors with our digital progeny, or might we, having learned from our past, approach this new frontier with humility and care? The social transformations wrought by AGI are likely to be as sweeping as those brought by the printing press, the steam engine, or the internet. Perhaps even more so. Work, that central axis around which much of our society turns, may change in ways we can scarcely imagine. Some tasks may be automated entirely, freeing us from drudgery, but also challenging our sense of purpose and identity. New forms of creativity, collaboration, and expression may blossom as humans and AGI work together in ways that amplify the best in each. Yet these changes will not be evenly distributed. The digital mirror, like all mirrors, can distort as well as reveal. Wealth, power, and opportunity may accrue to those who wield AGI most effectively, deepening existing inequalities or creating new ones. The challenge of governance, of ensuring that AGI serves the many, not just the few, becomes ever more urgent. Who decides how AGI is used and for whose benefit? How do we build systems that are transparent, accountable, and fair? Here, the lessons of history are both cautionary and inspiring. Every great technological leap has been shaped not only by invention, but by the choices of society, by laws, customs, movements, and visions. The printing press spread knowledge, but also propaganda. The steam engine powered industry, but also pollution. The internet connected minds across the globe, but also fueled division and surveillance. In each case, the technology was neither savior nor villain, but a mirror of our collective will. And so it may be with AGI. Its ultimate impact will depend on the stories we tell, the values we uphold, and the institutions we build. It may help us see ourselves more clearly, illuminating the patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that have long shaped our lives. It may reveal blind spots, challenge assumptions, and provoke us to grow. Or it may tempt us to abdicate responsibility, to let algorithms make choices we would rather avoid. The boundary between tool and partner is not fixed, but negotiated moment by moment in the choices we make. Perhaps the deepest promise of AGI is not that it will solve our problems for us, but that it will invite us to become wiser, more self-aware, more deliberate in our stewardship of knowledge and power. The digital mirror does not merely reflect, it refracts, splitting the light of our intentions into dazzling, unpredictable spectra. Some envision AGI as a kind of second enlightenment, a force that will help us transcend parochial concerns and see the world with new eyes. Others fear a loss of agency, a hollowing out of meaning, as machines take over tasks that once gave shape to our days. Between these poles lies a vast, unmapped territory, rich with possibility and peril. To navigate it, we will need not only technical skill, but philosophical courage, the willingness to ask and keep asking the hardest questions. What is the good life in an age of artificial minds? How do we balance efficiency with compassion, insight with humility, power with restraint? What does it mean to be human when intelligence is no longer our exclusive domain? The answers will not come easily, nor will they ever be final. The story of AGI is, in the end, a story of becoming, a continuous unfolding in which each generation adds its own verse. Our digital mirror is not a simple surface, but a labyrinth of reflections, each revealing new facets of ourselves and our creations. As the night grows deeper and the glow of our screens softens, we find ourselves returning to the ancient questions, not to resolve them once and for all, but to dwell with them, to let them shape us as we shape the future. For in the end, AGI may teach us as much about ourselves as about the nature of intelligence or the limits of machines. Its greatest gift may be the invitation to look more deeply, to care more wisely, to dream more boldly. And somewhere in that quiet space between question and answer, between reflection and action, between the known and the possible, the digital mirror waits, silent, patient, shimmering with potential. The world it reveals is one we have only just begun to imagine, with mysteries yet undreamt and stories yet untold. As our journey through the shimmering nebula of AGI and human intelligence gently drifts to a close, may your thoughts float like stardust settling softly in the quiet cosmos of night. Let the mysteries we've touched linger like a comet tail fading into the hush of space, inviting you to return for more Dreamtime tales that sparkle just beyond the horizon. Sleep well, and until we meet again among the stars.